Hi everyone, welcome back to Kingdom College. It's Celine and we'll be doing Power Reading Test 42 today. Before we begin, some key points from this test are fluency in sentences and understanding figurative language. So by fluency in sentences, I want to focus on which ideas are related to one another and how that determines the sentence that we are choosing to pick in our closed passages and our answers. For the second point, understanding figurative language. So for most of the extracts we've been studying recently, they are in fictional text. But for this one, we'll be looking at an interview, which is a non-fictional text. So I'd like you guys to, just understand how exaggerations and metaphors actually are really common in our daily lives and in casual settings as well. So this is the first text, Are We Living in Humdrum World by Rob Velasquez. So essentially they're talking about globalization, and if you don't know what globalization is, it's when brands expand their stores into different countries. So for example, they use the example of a Big Mac. So a Big Mac is by Macca's, and McDonald's has spread their branches in like Australia, Indonesia, China, and all like multiple countries, right? And so this text talks about the positive and the negative parts of globalization, as well as appreciating the differences in cultures. So please read this text by yourselves and just come back to this video once you're finished. So the first question is actually located in the second paragraph. By now, the author has established that they're going to talk to us about globalization, but also the differences in each other's culture and how that can be really positive because it serves as a learning experience, right? But at the same time, the author starts telling us that a good part about globalization is that we can recognize a product that is that we're familiar with, and we can feel a little bit of comfort and security because when you're feeling lost in an area that you're not familiar with, you're probably looking for something that you know, right? And that just kind of helps you stabilize yourself essentially. So the sentence before question 1 is, it can be sheer joy to round a corner and see something you know, the red vending machine of the world's favorite drink, which appears like a mirage. So this perfectly reflects the ideas I was just stating beforehand. So by saying that, we want a sentence that reflects this sense of comfort. So, for example, sentence B talks about the internet. So that's not a good sentence because we're looking at products that have been or that are recognizable. C is a great option because they talk explicitly about the Coke machine, which is the red vending machine that they're talking about, and how this offers them a sense of comfort, or at least how it would offer you a sense of comfort. So for question 1, the answer would be option B, sentence C. Question 2 is the following paragraph, and it basically tells us about the pros of globalization. So they talk about how you can talk to people, you can access many items or branded items and services. So for question 2, we kind of just want a bit of an explanation sentence that elaborates a bit more on the good parts of globalization. So the main theme of this paragraph is connectedness and like the availability of resources to people. So we want a sentence that highlights that. And in this case, G is a great option. G is a great option because, well, as it says, we all benefit from the ability to exchange goods, services, and ideas freely and with relative ease. The sentence before that tells us how we can communicate easily, like wherever people are, whenever we want to. And then the following sentence says that this is a prime time throughout, like in history, because we can just talk to each other, connect with one another whenever we want, compared to say like the 1800s where we didn't have phones, right? The other sentences aren't highlighting the positive parts of globalization enough, and they don't talk enough about being connected with one another. So that's why our answer is option D, sentence G. For question three, we're still talking about the good parts of globalization. So the author says that they like the fact that you can discover new places, learn more information by traveling. And we're trying to find a sentence that really talks about just finding something new or learning something new. The following sentence after question three is, why have a technology that allows you to speak to anyone anywhere in the world and use it to talk to the person next door? So they're not necessarily bashing technology, but they're saying that just having a real face-to-face experience is just really beneficial for you. It's new, it's authentic, and you just learn more. So we want a sentence that talks about technology. Sentences D and F in the options we have, those don't talk about technology. So we only have A and B. The difference I would say between A and B is that A has a tone that is quite negative, right? Saying people don't need to interact in an unfamiliar environment anymore. All the information is at their fingertips, supposedly. So they're saying that, like, oh, you don't need to interact with the people around you, because you can just access that information in your phone, or at least that's what we think. So that kind of has a negative connotation with it compared to B, which says that the internet is an opportunity for you to learn more information. So they have a more positive outlook on the internet. So in this, for this question, we should choose option B, sentence B, because of its positive connotation, and the sentences around it be talking about the good parts of globalization and exploring and learning new things and just being present. Towards the end of this paragraph, I would say that the tone definitely shifts into something a little bit more, I guess, analytical. So they are saying that globalization has its perks, but there are also some really negative parts that come with it. And you can see in the second part of this paragraph as well, there's a bunch of rhetorical questions. And if you look at the options that we do have, there are no rhetorical questions there. So I'd like us to use our own discernment for this for these sentences. So the sentence before question 4 reads, have you ever experienced the joy of explaining your culture to an outsider? So this is a good this is a positive connotation. So they're trying to say, like, this is a good experience to share your own culture because you're celebrating your differences. And the sentence afterwards, are we becoming a world where we thirst to be the same as everyone else and differences are eliminated? So the author is almost trying to encourage us to stay different from one another, to I guess, keep our own cultures, but also share them with one another. And that these differences do not mean that we need to kick anyone out, that it could just be something that we could all celebrate. So let's find a sentence that does talk about differences and celebrating it. So in this case, the only sentences related to celebrating differences is sentences E and F. So learning from others is essentially a human experience. We don't need to be afraid of it. So this could be a good sentence, I think. Let's take a look at the other one as well. Well, this kind of human experience won't happen very often if the world becomes some sort of cultural porridge where we're all boiled down into a featureless goo. Sorry about that. I would say that F is a better option for this paragraph. So the reason for this is because F explicitly talks about how it's important for us to be different, because if we are all the same, then we become a quote-unquote cultural porridge where we're all boiled down to a featureless goo, which means that we're all going to be the same and there's nothing unique about one of us. We're all just I guess, just carbon copies of one another, and we won't learn from one another because we know each other already. Whereas option E just talks about learning and the human experience, which is once again, what we are talking about, but option F is much more better because we talk a lot about the differences. So for question 4, it should be option D, sentence F. Question 5 now starts to evaluate that there are some bad parts about globalization. So there are the good parts that we've mentioned before in the 2 to 3 paragraphs, but in this paragraph, we also talk about how this could be quite damaging for one another. The author does, however, conclude that they would still want to share their culture. So they're trying to say that yes, there could definitely be some consequences to capitalism, globalization, and such, but they do want other people to come into their their area and experience their culture, because differences, like they've mentioned multiple times, is something that they believe should be celebrated. I would say that because of that conclusion, we want another sentence that says differences are something that's good, but specifically about culture and learning from one another. So I would say options A and options C and option F is they're not good sentences because they don't talk about culture and differences, specifically culture and difference, because F does talk about differences. So that leaves us with option E. So option E is a good sentence. Learning from others is an essentially human experience. We don't need to be afraid of it, because it follows the next sentence, which is culture shock doesn't have to be a negative thing. So this sentence basically tells us that these differences are good for us. They're good for learning about one another, and it's not something that is terrifying. It's something that we should be open to and learn. And finally, for the last question, the author has acknowledged that there are some good parts and bad parts about globalization, but they've highlighted that it's really important for one of us, or every one of us, to be different and retain these differences. Because if we don't continue our cultures and our differences, then essentially we become boring, and all of us, we're just not going to be, I guess, cultured, right? So in question 6, the sentence after it, prepare yourself for a world of clones where none of us is any different from anyone else. This world sounds incredibly boring, and we're looking at something that is, like they've said, like monotone, right? So we want a sentence that reflects that. Option A talks about technology and its convenience, which is not related to that. Option B is the internet again. Then option C talks about differences, which is great because we also haven't chosen this option yet. And it says soon we won't be watching and listening to the same things. We'll be thinking about the same and sounding the same. So this aligns with the monotonous behavior. Option C would be a great answer, like with sentence D. Option D, which is E, this one is not talking about being monotonous. It's actually got a positive outlook, but in this case, we kind of want something that's a bit pessimistic, just to finally conclude the author's piece. So for the second extract, we have an interviewer with Sonia Hartnett, and their interviewer is asking about their book. I'd like you guys to read this extract first before attempting the questions. So for the first question, in paragraph 1, the interviewer repeats the words "and." Why is this done? So I've put up a screenshot of the first paragraph, and by reading this sentence, we find your writing so lyrical and evocative and graceful and exquisite and precise and introspective and damn near teetering on poetry. Right, so this sentence, when we really think about it, it is grammatically incorrect because, as we know, as a general rule, sentences should only use "and" once if you're looking at two clauses, unless you are listing and those items are grouped together. But essentially, this sentence is grammatically incorrect but it's in a casual setting, so it's okay. They keep saying, or they keep using words that describe Sonia's writing, that is very positively, right? So lyrical, evocative, graceful, exquisite, precise, introspective. It's almost as if they're just like, I would say, like praising and like rambling on about Sonia's talent, right? So that fits well with option B, which is to emphasize how impressive Sonia Hartnett's writing is. Because if they wanted to say like Sonia Hartnett is pretty good, they would just use 2 or 3 adjectives, and they would also just list it normally. So it would be a grammatically correct sentence. But in this case, they are almost like fawning over her work. They're using multiple adjectives with positive connotations. For question 8, is Sonia a shy person? So for these questions, they do tell us which paragraph you can find the answers in, but in this case, I've put up paragraph 2. So Sonia does say that they were very shy at growing up, but then they eventually overcame this shyness, particularly through their craft, right? So through their own writing. Though they do say that the shy person within themselves is like always there. So we can say that she is shy, right? But she's more shy on the inside, but not on the outside. So option C. The reason for this is because she does say that she opened up more as she has written more and flourished in her career. But still within her, because she was shy before, she's still shy on the inside. Question 9 asks us, Sonia says, when I write, I listen to the tune of the words. What does she mean? So I'd actually like you guys to look at the entire paragraph to answer this question. And when you finish reading it, you'll notice that she actually uses music as a metaphor for writing. So let's stick with that image of music. So if you were to imagine like a very rough draft of a song, you might actually find that they play the instrument first, at least for some songwriting, right? So say there's like guitars playing, right? There's a melody or a harmony, there's a rhythm to it, and when there are pauses, right, the writer might think, okay, well, this is where I'm going to stop talking, and then I'll start speaking like my next line at this like this next beat or something like that, right? So by following this analogy, it's as if like the music is quite literally telling the artist like, hey, you should start singing at this point. And it's kind of similar to what Hartnett experiences. So she imagines that the book, right, or the paper is telling her what should be written. So following this analogy, it's more so she follows her intuition. So she listens to the rhythm the words create. So essentially, like I've said before, she listens to, or she pays attention to what should be said in her book, and then she writes about it, right? So she's not someone who, say, has a plan already. She like waits for like inspiration to come with her. So this, once again, this is very figurative. You have to follow the metaphor of music that she's used. And for the very last question, why does Sonia use so many metaphors in her writing? So, firstly, she says that she's not sure why she is drawn to metaphors. People often say like negative things about it, but yeah, like it just says like she's not sure why. She thinks that it's something that's unique to her own style, and she also mentions that it makes her feel connected with reality. So by referencing like real life objects, items, or people, events, right? She can relate it to herself and her own feelings, right? So she uses the word interconnectedness, which I think is a great word to use. She also says that it well, by doing so, she implies that it creates a deeper meaning with her image or like emotion. So it's more complex. Rather than saying I'm sad, she might compare her sadness to the rain or to an animal, which is quite artistic, and like she mentioned before, it connects her to reality. And also it's just it creates it creates images to her emotions, and we as audiences have a deeper understanding of what she's feeling, or what she wants us to imagine. If you haven't noticed, we've basically listed all of the reasons that have been put up on the screen. So essentially, the answer should be D, all of the above. For this question, I think you just really had to pay attention to the entire paragraph of Hartnett's dialogue. So please note that in the question it said down like P4, like paragraph 4. So to sum up this test, the fluency in sentences is determined by the related ideas of the sentences themselves and how they can logically follow the argument or conclusion. And secondly, understanding figurative language means that we should be looking at all of the sentences and all of the information that the author has presented within their text. So that's it for today. I'll see you guys next week.